Wow, we got a much needed break here, Jeff. Just the hydration and energy we needed to close out our final segment here with a really powerful customer story, thinking about as you think about this proliferation of agentic IDEs and just making it easier to code, not just in a sandbox, but with real enterprise infrastructure and applications. The ability, as Resolve AI says for themselves, machines on call for humans. Nobody better than Manveer here to comment on the unique way that they're using agentic AI, Amazon Bedrock, and beyond. Welcome to the show, Manveer. Excited to have you.
Hey, Robbie, awesome to be on the show.
Can you tell us a little bit more about AI and maybe the origin story? I know you were the founders? Many of the folks in your company come from open telemetry, so you've lived and breathed the observability world and the pain that developers and SREs can face when they get paged in the middle of the night to go solve something immediately. No context. I got to dive in. How did you stumble upon the statement? How to Resolve AI get it started?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, right? Like if you think about the origin story, and like this is all documented on the website as well. Like for the last several years or decades, really, it's all been about more and more data being like served up to engineers about how do you think about troubleshooting your production environment. So you got more dashboards, more traces, more logs, more metrics, and more of all this. But the toil was always left on humans. So as we look at the founding team, that the co-creators of Resolve AI, they've actually been working together for over 15 years across multiple different endeavors that have led them to Splunk, to VMware, co-founding two additional companies that were acquired by those vendors, co-creating open telemetry. And it wasn't until at Splunk that they thought they were done with this startup adventure. They're like, there's something different here about what AI promises. And it was really the limitations of their own imaginations that was like, hey, we don't have that the imagination is there. Now the tooling is finally there of how do we rethink what does it mean to manage production systems? What does it mean to go on call? What does it mean to manage those war rooms? Yeah, so like the founding story for Spiros and Maya, so those are the two co-founders of Resolve, is definitely one of like just living the toil and that grind for several decades and finally coming up with a solution that's solving, the pain for engineers everywhere.
Yeah, Manveer, it sounds like you have a demo for us. I kind of want to see what Resolve AI is doing, and let's talk about it while you're showing us.
Yeah, happy to. So if the demo environment's up today, so what you can see here is that Resolve offers two experiences. I'm going to start here from the UX because I really want to ground of like what Resolve is and how we work, and this is going to be important for setting the stage later. But ultimately, as you think about a multi-agent system, so this isn't an LLM wrapper, this isn't some RAG system. We're not just doing a single MCP call. This is truly a multi-agent, multi-model system that's been built on being able to do a couple of things. One is understanding your production environment all the way from telemetry traces, so your observability data, down to infrastructure and code. It's a system that's also designed to reason, right? Just the way humans reason through complexity and toil, same way. Take action on being able to figure out what the remediation plan is, invoke other tools to get the process started, and then continuously learn, which is probably the hardest thing to do and also the most important aspect of this as well, right? Is like, how do you engage that learning? So the way we approach this is really just to kind of bring you through when people are getting set up here. So let me just kind of pull up the knowledge graph. This is kind of like, think about the backbone or the brains of kind of what sets the stage for everything else. So now this isn't meant for human consumption. Like, I don't think there's a single person out there in the world that knows their end-to-end production environment from scratch. But you can imagine this is one production system. And the amount of dependencies, and like everything that if you drill down to like the node level performance, like that's all documented here. And in this particular, and we'll come back to this, but in this particular environment, like what we're doing is from the integration standpoint, it's to set up on Datadog. It's a DNS tap that we've done. We've also integrated GitHub and the Kubernetes as well, right, with Slack in this particular kind of environment that we've done. Now, there's other integrations and services that are available, like how do you get into AWS, Atlassian, Grafana, and others. But for this particular setup, this is what we have configured here. So if I go back to that knowledge graph,
so
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
That knowledge graph is of a workload per se. So are those all microservices?
Yeah, so these are your so these would be like microservices. Like this, in this case, this is like the consumer checkout, like the checkout cart, what we have here. So if I were to just click into the front end proxy, right, as an example, what this does is then it allows me to map out all the interdependencies within the environment itself, right? So that's extremely powerful because most humans, unless you're working on your individual microservices or a set of services that you wouldn't have this level of context if you're the one going on call that night and something else breaks.
Or if there was like this, if this was mapped out previously, it was maybe mapped out like maybe 6 months ago before things changed and it's out of date and you're looking at old documentation. So I've been there. So
Yeah, I mean, 6 months is, I think, even a week, right? Like nowadays, it's like you're pushing, like as well as Darko was saying, your vibe coding, like code is changing so frequently. Like it's not even about 6 months, or it's like the changes that are happening on a weekly or the daily basis. So one thing that I'll call out here before we kind of go to the fun stuff is really the ability, what I talked about, the learning, right? So over time, with every engagement, with every incident, or just me coming in here and helping to improve the knowledge base, the agents become smarter and smarter and more attuned to your specific environment based on those interactions. And so they're always learning and retaining that in the form of memories. So that becomes super powerful. So that way you're not having to kind of retrain it every single time that it's going back on call. Like it just goes on call and it's almost like self-improving. So with that, let me go ahead and jump over to like what this would look like from a user experience for folks, right? So a couple of ways, right here. In this case, we have our alert system set up. This is me in Slack right now, so this is like fully in production. So if it does stall a little bit, or if it's having to think a couple of cycles, this isn't a stage environment. This is like fully running in prod for like a live demo scenario. So I'm just going to come in here. This trigger was fired today around like 12 p.m. 12 p.m. So right while this show was going on, Resolve immediately came in, acknowledged that this issue was triggered, goes back and starts doing its initial like investigation, right? Of like, what do I think is happening in the top findings that are coming here? So in this case, it was a front end P50 latency for post API checkout exceeds, right? The threshold starting point for approximately at 1901 UTC. So what is that, about 701 roughly, right? If I get the military time right. I think that's about right.
Real quick, P50 was probably like the 50th percentile. That's sort of probably how you configured this alert to trigger if latency goes above the 50th percentile. Just make sure.
So that's 100% right. So it understands the context of what the parameters that were set. And then it's like, okay, hey, this did get triggered. The alert was triggered. So we're not in the alerting business, but the alert was triggered. We come in and start getting into the triaging and then the investigation portion. Yep. But you start understanding, because it has that knowledge of your production systems and whatever tribal knowledge was loaded at the start and it's learning over time, it starts running almost like, these are the multiple hypotheses that I think I want to go test based on either known experiences, what I have context on about these types of incidents, or just kind of where the alerts were figuring, like starting, and then any dependencies that it may have had. So ultimately it does this. So, and then quickly right after, it comes in with this most likely working theory. And once again, this is all being showcased in Slack, and I haven't even left a Slack experience, right? And so most of the, if you think about most of the initial debugging during incidents or war times, everybody's scrambling through their Slack experiences or Teams or what have you. And so finally, if I want to get to a point where it's like, okay, I want to dive in deeper, I want to see what's really going on or figure out how the remediation plan is, then I'd come over to the UI. And this is where I could start, and I could also engage with Resolve in Slack as well. So just at Resolve and like continue the conversation there. But if I want to start seeing today, like at least more of the details, all the evidence that's being surfaced up, because it understands the pool. So it's not just a black box experience. It's going to surface up the evidence. That's where you'd come into the Resolve experience here. So in this case, right, so you see the dashboards is pulling up. It's reading those dashboards. It has a good understanding of what are the relevant dashboards here. Came back with the working theories that you see here as well, right? So multiple downstream services were performing degradations. And then here's the evidence if I want to dive deeper. So in this case, it's a 391 Redis connectivity error logs occurred. It continues to provide that granularity that you would expect and you would normally have to go find on your own. And if I continue to go further down, and this is all just the investigation that is served up and came back within minutes of the alert firing, right? It actually goes and sequences out the timeline as well. Go ahead.
What's funny, what you just showed, this kind of output is what you typically see at the end, like 2 weeks later, after a full performance review has been like, this is what happened 2 weeks ago. We took a long time and we figured all this stuff out. And you said this is able to pull this stuff very quickly.
It is. It's very, you're spot on. So this is very quickly, within minutes. So typically in most cases, we'll see from triage to complete investigation with evidence in about 5 minutes, right? And you're spot on. That would normally, if it's like depending on the severity of the alert or the incident, if it's it's an outage of some sort, obviously it's all hands on deck. But other ones, like step one, step two, like you may not prioritize it as much, and that may take longer. But this is definitely, how do we get to that? How do we enable engineers to start fixing faster versus just trying to figure out what went wrong?
So how do things like enterprise guardrails or human in the loop integration look like? Do I have to accept some changes? Can I put guardrails on what changes need to be accepted by me versus automatically remediated?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So today we're not in the remediation business yet, right? So it's all about how do we actually reduce that toil or eliminate that toil of actually figuring out what went wrong. Now, can you imagine in a couple of months where we're, hey, within those guardrails are predefined, types of activities that Resolve can take? Is that feasible? Very likely, right? And so what an example could look like is like, obviously rollbacks are very safe, right? So especially during, when you've done a new release, and like, hey, that issue was caused by the release. There's high confidence level, you have all the evidence to support it, then go ahead and do an automatic rollback to the prior version. So that could be one that's within these predefined guardrails. And we're hearing customers actually becoming, I think if you were to look back even 6 months to a year, there's probably a little hesitation of AI taking action on behalf of humans. And we're getting to a point where now it's like our customers are asking us, sorry, got that Slack notification going on, that customers are actually asking us like, hey, can you take action within these predefined guardrails for us? So, and then your second question about the human in the loop, at any given time, whether it's in that initial Slack experience or here, I, as the engineer or anybody who's investigating this, could just take control and start diving deeper. So here, like I was going to start asking to just understand if there's other dependencies, right? Just as an example, dependencies that show elevated error rates or resource saturation. Apologies for the spelling there. Trying to do this quickly during the front end checkout latency spike, right? So it's going to go turn its wheels. Hopefully this does it quick. Like I said, it's going, but you see the investigations going. There's everything's kind of working in the background. But this is, so, okay, I actually did that fairly quickly. So you kind of come back in here and you see like, hey, during the front end checkout latency, right, there were definitely downstream dependencies that were impacted. And this is where like the additional magic of all this starts to come to life, where I could actually ask like, hey, what's the remediation plan, right? What's the fix? Write a PR, create a postmortem, right? All these things that normally is like on the burden of engineers to go do. It's like, how do we remove that toil off their plates, right? So they're focusing more on building versus this firefighting mode that they get distracted with.
So I've got two questions for you. We are live with thousands of builders tuning in, and I want to take some questions from the audience if that's okay, Manveer. People are super excited, and
yeah, bring it on.
I want to first question that we got is about root cause analysis. So there's GVO Cypher says, so how does root cause analysis play a role, and in what order the sequencing is Resolve AI using that?
Yeah, so like obviously root cause, right? If you think about it, for even humans today, it's an extremely difficult thing to do because and most likely the default is to go figure out like, hey, these are the known symptoms that I know, so it's my tribal knowledge and I know it's likely here, but that may not be the true cause of things because there might be some downstream dependency that's caused the theory. So I think everybody in this space, including Resolve AI, we are aggressively working towards improving the root cause and getting to the highest confidence level. But the goal of all this is to actually get to root cause, right? So there is high confidence, all this stuff. So in this case, we're framing it as working theories. But if you were to go further down in here, like it's actually the most probable cause, right? We're actually, saying without saying root cause, like, hey, this is your root cause, like very likely it's either one of these incidents, this incident, or, the multiple downstream service performance degradations that were causing this issue. So, but you can imagine like it's very much about getting towards root cause.
And we have one more question from that same individual around. It's clearly this is resonating if we're already getting questions around how much does this cost?
Yeah, contact us is the best way to put it. Right now, like, I don't think that, it's not publicly pricing available, but I'd say the best way is just to contact us, and, we could see what that means for your particular environment and everything else. So I just want to wrap on this. I know we're coming up to time on your guys' end, but you see it's gone through, came back with a fix. I could even go ask next if there's like code issues or code related fixes, generate the code for me. And if I wanted to at that point, go to a coding agent and like do all the magic with that as well from here. I know somebody mentioned Vibe, Darko mentioned Vibe coding. The other aspect of this is all about real-time production incidents, like the fire is active, but how do you also go proactive? And we call it as vibe debugging. And like an engineer is just coming in and it's like, hey, you know what? Customers saying that there's might be some performance issues. Can you tell me what's going on? And just simple prompts like that, using natural language to understand what is happening in your production system, is the other aspect of Resolve AI as well.
Yeah, I was going to say Vibe Ops. How about that?
Yeah, Vibe Ops. I don't know. We'll see which one we can make happen. But if that's not a coin term, then we'll take it.
Or chaos vibing. How about that?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's pull that one with the audience. That's what I'll say.
Cool, man. Veer, this is really great. I wish we had a little bit more time, but thanks so much for this demo. It was really interesting. Excited to see Gen AI and all of the agents, and we're just seeing new, like, you're limited by your imagination. So it's like, oh, do some research and everything. But now we're seeing like anyone in IT who just saw your demo can relate to that somehow, whether it's, like trying to figure out what happened, root cause analysis. But I could just see, while that might not be the real root cause analysis, it's a good starting point where you have no starting point when, it's 3 a.m. and you don't know what to do. Those look like really promising starting points.
100%, right? You're not an empty maze anymore, right?
Yeah.
Or, a needle in a haystack. Like, you have direction, and then the root cause, like, you're just going to see that the improvement getting better and better, and the accuracy rate. And like, we're definitely leading the charge on that. So, cool. Yeah. But thank you for the time, guys.